plenty of paint on the street, and with my 2 1/4, I would just walk the streets and capture portraits that I saw on the ground, unknowingly made by painters, house painters. I did a series of Greek goddesses and gods and goddesses, trying to illustrate each of the 12 main deities. It was interesting though because here I I actually selected people that I felt really embodied these these gods. I think this gentleman's now in AA. So. But the series progressed. My talent for selecting the right person was really quite accurate. Hera and Artemis and Zeus. From 95 to 99, I traveled the world extensively and photographed a lot of rock and roll album covers and pinup girls for various magazines and record labels. And when I moved down here in '99 to Los Angeles, I wanted to start a new series. So I decided on New Year's Eve 2000, I was going to start this whole new series. And once again, with my 2 1/4, just I created an assignment for myself. I took a pro pack of 120 film and a bag full of masks, and I began a 2-year study of what I now call the mask series. And this image is the first image I shot on New Year's Day 2000, and it's the first in a series of 33 images. The premise was to allow each subject to select a mask of their choice, and in the 2 rolls of film that I allowed myself, in total natural light, I try to capture them in action, and very little direction was needed because I'm telling you, once people put on a mask, they are free. They're free, and what happens in front of the camera is delightful, and I love capturing it. It was interesting how the most introverted of these subjects actually ended up being the most demonstrative. Masks allowed each individual to kind of feel, like I said, free and unjudged. So in response to shooting exclusively in black and white natural light for over 2 years, I challenged myself once again to produce the largest photo shoot I could dream of. I wanted to create images that I could see hanging in adult playroom. And so Toyland was born. I hired 3 assistants, 3 hairstylists, a woodworker, a fabricator, a stylist, and enlisted a small army of friends, models, and fellow artists to join me in this conceptual fairy tale I concocted. I even painted the boxes and hand molded a lot of the pieces there. The idea is to test my limits and see what I could do with a larger group of people instead of being an individual artist. I wanted to see what I could create with a team. We did this all in a day. So we didn't create the boxes and the costumes in a day, but we shot. I think it worked. My next series the following year went back to back to my natural light. It was quite a production putting Toyland together. So I started working on a series that I'm still working on called Boys with Sticks, and produced a few images for that. The idea was to kind of take sports out of its context. It was name picture. And this is at a coffee shop, so creating the tension between as a trick, as taking it outside the arena of sports became kind of more of a violent and sexual nature, to be honest, in a lot of these images. From 2004 to 2007, I began looking at color more closely as an actual subject and began to capture architectural structures that resonated with me. I'm a big fan of pop color, pop culture, pop art, and a lot of these late 60s, early 70s structures really resonate with me. These iconographic buildings from past decades started becoming more and more abstract as I try to whittle them down to their most basic elements. But you still know it's a Pizza Hut. My aesthetics are drawn, as I said, to the pop art realm of the 60s, and therefore I was drawn to these 60s structures, and eventually to their primary colors. In 2005, I began to work for the artist David Hockney, and I first started out as his photo archivist, and then in the last 10 years, I've evolved into becoming not only that, but the head of reproduction. So it was a natural leap to start looking intensely at color and shapes and textures in my images. And it kind of reflected how I was narrowing my view in the world of color space that I was living in at least 8 hours a day. Color space is an interesting world to live in. I'm sure that you're intently looking at your imagery and printing. I think for me, as head of reproductions, when I go to press, it's also the translation of what this one color will be when it gets translated into a printed medium, say from RGB to CMYK. So it's interesting. You no longer see solid color. I never see solid color anymore. Everything's just the subtlest shade. So when I'm color correcting images, I dive below the surface and see color in between color, which I think we all do when we start really looking. This is a fairly recent body of work. Sun shadows. This is the only series I've created with using my iPhone. So far, it's been a lot of fun. The strong sunlight here in Los Angeles creates these wonderfully strong and graphic shadows, especially on staircases, which allows the shadows to dance and play on the undulating surfaces below. So my studying color architectural forms led me to the desire to flatten out space so one could approach these images as graphic elements and then discover their three-dimensionality. Like I said, I really enjoy, I think, in any art, not just photography, but to have a sense of discovery. When you sit and look at an image and something opens up in the image once you take the time to look at it. I remember sitting in front of a Willem de Kooning while I had to write a paper, and I had like 103-degree temperature. But it was great because I was stripped of all my natural, theory and analytical training that I had, and I just looked with a temperature. But I saw color and depth in the painting that really changed how I looked at images. This is a slide. A slide for children. So here you go. You drink in the visual in front of you, and the piece slowly reveals itself to you. Recently, I started a series on county fairs. I'm determined to go to all 26. I've done 6 so far. And it kind of harkens back to many of the subjects and approaches I've kind of used in the past. But just getting back to basics, black and white, composition. County fairs are just, I want to photograph all, I'm interested, as I'm doing this series, I see various elements and themes cropping up in each fair that I go to. The employees, the environments, and the repetitive themes started developing all on their own, from the carnival workers to the people who work in the photo booths or the photo huts, to the structural lemon that somebody lives in. I like a good sense of humor in my work. favorite thing about a great piece of artwork, and specifically in photography, is when an image is timeless. Um, the subjects at fairs and carnivals are eternal, and they lend themselves to timelessness. I'm not saying this is a great piece of work, but what I'm saying is we can all relate to this, and it's something familiar. And then you can strip it down, and I think a bit of magic happens when an image is timeless, when you don't know what decade's from. This last body of work I'm going to show you tonight is something I've been working on for the last 2 years. This is called Fleeting Perspectives, a paper ballet. It's probably my most conceptual body work to date, and it is based a lot on a lot of Dada, surrealistic, and theories. What I did is I wanted to, it was my desire to create a tension between, and continuity at the same time, between a ballerina and a modern dancer. And I created the costumes as well as the sets. Now the sets are shot inside a 16 by 16 inch cardboard box, and then I dropped the people in. I've always been drawn to German expressionism, and a lot of elements of their theory is on display. And I'll play kind of a deeper role in the third character on the stage, which is the shadow. None of these shadows belong to these people, and they kind of interplay with each other. The iconography and symbolism of the shapes and the costumes and set I constructed out of paper, to the choice I selected in the shadows, which were photographed separately. I actually photographed the shadows. I didn't really create them digitally. There's a real sense of disbursement in a shadow at the edges that I wanted. So when you see these blown up, I feel like it has that sense of texture. It tells a tale of a single moment captured on film. So the series is almost complete and contains 16 images which have been constructed, masked, layered, and produced solely in Photoshop. Well, it's been a pleasure to share my body of work with you. I hope this overview may inspire you to go out and create your own body of work, so that you can visually see your gift in a physical form that we can all see in the future. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions for Julie?
I do.
Yes.
So I'm really interested in your series of the county fairs.
Yes.
So I noticed that all the pictures that you showed were portraits.
Yes.
And do you think that that's probably the direction you're going to continue to go as
Definitely.
you travel to each one?
Oh, definitely, yes. I'm very fascinated with the people that work there, but also more in the sense of the portrait juxtaposed with these amazing repetitive backgrounds in black and white. So it really flattens it out.
Wow.
Didn't touch a thing. So yes, I will definitely be continuing that.
And you're not color. I mean, I saw that you
Yes.
did not show color, but you think the black and white
It will
is
be only
your
black and
choice. Yeah, they're interesting.
Thank you.
And is it 26 in the?
There are 26 in California, although
There
there's
are.
57 counties. There's only 26 that have county fairs, which is interesting. But it's, as I show them, people have their favorite county fairs. So I'll be going to Tulare, and I believe there's one up in way up north at the very tip. Everybody's like, oh, but it's interesting, you know. You go anywhere, you go to the same restaurant in Idaho, you go here, you see similarities, but it's interesting, these county fairs, you have these repetitive patterns that come out. You know, you've got the people who's shooting photographs, whether it's at a photo booth or so it's interesting. I've actually seen one guy at all 6 county fairs, and I've photographed him. He is a photographer who shoots parrots on top of people. So he sets them up, and they put parrots on their shoulder, and they get their portrait. So that'll be interesting.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
What was the term that you used when you created a story within a frame and took a picture? You took a picture and then took a picture of the picture.
Oh, copy work.
Copy work.
Yes, I call it copy work. What we used to do in the old days is you would have a 4x5 camera. You would load it, your cassettes, and you would place. What I did for this particular body of work is I printed 11x14 prints of black and white prints of portraits, and I'd lay it flat, and it was lit, and you would actually then sync it all together and shoot a color. I would shoot a 4x5 color neg after having put the color bordered around it. Copy work.
It comes from when you didn't have a negative, if someone just came in with
Mhm.
a photograph and then
Yeah,
they
you
wanted
want
to
it.
reproduce it.
We scan them.
Of course.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Could you talk more about when you moved to LA in '99
Yes.
and you created your assignment for yourself?
Yes.
How did that process happen? Like how did you? Yeah.
How do I make assignments for myself?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I'm really hard on myself. No, I'm kidding. What I could sit around and just do ideas all day long. They come to me. I have to write them down. But this particular one came about. To be totally honest, I did not choose it. It kind of chose me. So it's a funny story. I brought my 2 1/4 camera. I brought a Pro Pack, which is 5 rolls of film, and I said, whatever starts here on New Year's Day, I'm gonna follow through and make a body work out of it. So a friend of mine was Danny Elfman, who's Oingo Boingo, the composer.
Yeah.
She was his assistant, and we got invited to his New Year's party for 2000. And that's kind of a special thing, and I thought something's gonna happen. So we stayed overnight. It was a great party, and then in the morning, he started strewing masks around because on a great New Year's Eve, some people would be a little hungover. So there were all these masks, and we started putting them on. It was very surreal, and that's the moment I knew what my project was. But I had already had the idea that whatever was going to come about, I was going to really look at it and see what it was. So I opened myself up to fate. And I believe fate draws you to what you're destined to do, if you're aware. That's where that started. And it was about 2.5 years of just doing that. At least maybe 33 of them, so, a fair amount of time.